What if the Dragon Queen knelt before the Wolf of Winterfell and offered him the crown that kings have died for? Today, we're diving into the most shocking alternate timeline in Westeros history. Asterisk, the winds of change swept across Westeros like wildfire, but this time, they carried a different song. In King's Landing, as the bells rang out across the city, Daenerys Targaryen stood atop the Red Keep, her violet eyes reflecting not madness, but clarity. The Iron Throne sat before her, twisted and terrible, but she saw something else entirely. She saw Ned Stark's face. The Dragon Queen had conquered the Seven Kingdoms, but victory tasted like ash in her mouth. Jon Snow's true parentage revelation had shattered her world, yet it also opened her eyes to a truth she'd been blind to. The throne she'd dreamed of was built on lies, fear, and the bones of the innocent. Oh my God, can you imagine? The woman who spent 8 seasons chasing power suddenly questioning everything. Ravens flew north faster than ever before, carrying a message that would shake the foundations of West. Lord Stark, the scroll read in High Valyrian, I request your immediate presence in King's Landing. The realm has need of you. Signed with the 3-headed dragon seal, but bearing words no conqueror had ever written. Ned Stark, very much alive, in this timeline, received the message and the gods would have won. The Honorable Lord had survived Cersei's plot through a twist of fate. Arya's quick thinking and Syrio Foral's sacrifice had created just enough chaos for him to escape the Red Keep. He'd spent years in hiding, watching his children grow into legends while remaining a ghost of his former self. Wait, what? Ned Stark alive? This changes absolutely everything we thought we knew. The journey south was treacherous, but Ned traveled with a small party including his most trusted men. As they approached King's Landing, the city looked different. The smoke of battle had cleared, but something else had changed. The streets were quieter, the people watchful but not afraid. Daenerys had conquered with fire and blood, but she hadn't ruled with it. In the throne room, the meeting that would reshape history began. Daenerys descended from the Iron Throne as Ned entered, her steps echoing in the vast hall. She wore no crown, carried no scepter. Before the shocked Northern Lord, she knelt. Lord Stark, she said, her voice carrying across the silent room. I have conquered the 7 kingdoms, but I cannot rule them. The throne belongs to one who understands honor, justice, and the weight of leadership. I offer you the Iron Throne. Holy 7 hells. Did the Dragon Queen just kneel to the king in the north? Ned's weathered face showed no emotion, but his mind raced. This was impossible. Everything he knew about Targaryens, about power, about conquest, it all crumbled before this moment. Your Grace, he said carefully, I don't understand. Daenerys rose, her dragon-scale armor catching the light filtering through the throne. Rooms, windows, I came here to break chains. Lord Stark, but I've learned that sometimes the heaviest chains are the ones we forge for ourselves. This throne has consumed everyone who's sat upon it. I won't let it consume me. She gestured to the twisted metal monstrosity behind her. Aegon built this throne from the swords of his enemies, melted by dragon fire. It was meant to be uncomfortable, to remind rulers that power is a burden, but it became something else. A symbol of absolute authority that corrupts absolutely. This is insane. The woman who burned King's Landing in the original timeline is now philosophizing about power. Ned stepped closer, his gray eyes studying the young queen. And you believe I should bear this burden instead? I believe you're the only one who can bear it without being destroyed by it. Daenerys replied, You've proven that honor means more to you than power. When you had the chance to save yourself by betraying your principles, you chose death instead. That's the kind of man who should rule. The conversation continued for hours, witnessed only by Tyrion Lannister who stood in the shadows, his clever mind working furiously. This was unprecedented in the history of Westeros. A conqueror voluntarily abandoning power. It defied everything he knew about human nature. Tyrion's probably having the biggest mental breakdown of his life right now, but Ned wasn't convinced. Your Grace, I am a northerner. I know nothing of southern politics, of trade, of the complexities of ruling 6 other kingdoms. I am a soldier, not a king. Daenerys smiled for the first time in months. And that, Lord Stark, is exactly why you're perfect for this role. You won't rule for glory or personal gain. You'll rule because it's your duty. She moved to the great windows overlooking the city. I've traveled across the narrow sea, seen the suffering of slaves, the greed of masters, the corruption of power. I thought I could change everything with dragons and fire. But real change comes from within, from choosing to do what's right, even when it's difficult. Wait, is she actually making sense? This is blowing my mind. The negotiation wasn't simple. Ned demanded conditions that would have made lesser rulers laugh. He wanted a council of representatives from each kingdom, not just noble houses, but common folk too. He wanted laws protecting the innocent, rights for the small folk, and an end to the practice of trial by combat for serious crimes. Daenerys agreed to everything. More than that, she helped craft the new system of governance. Her experience freeing slaves in Essos had taught her about liberation. While Ned's years ruling the North had shown him the importance of justice tempered with mercy, these two are basically creating the most progressive government Westeros has ever seen. The announcement shook the realm to its core. Daenerys Targaryen, the Dragon Queen, conqueror of cities, would step down. Eddard Stark, the honorable fool who'd lost his head to politics, would become king. The reactions were explosive. In winter, Sansa Stark dropped the letter she was reading. Her father, alive, and now offered the Iron Throne. It was impossible. Yet the Raven bore the royal seal. Jon Snow, still believing himself a bastard in this timeline, felt his world shift. His father on the throne that had corrupted so many others. In Dorne, Prince Doran, Martell smiled for the first time since Oberyn's death. A just king might mean justice for his family's suffering. In the Reach, the lords who'd bent the knee to Daenerys wondered if this northern king would understand their agricultural concerns. Every single kingdom is having their own crisis right now. But the real challenge came from an unexpected source. The people of King's Landing themselves. They'd lived under mad kings, cruel kings, weak kings, and conquering queens. Now they were offered an honorable king, and they didn't know how to react. Riots broke out, not from anger, but from confusion. Some wanted Daenerys to remain, at least they knew what to expect from her. Others saw opportunity in the chaos. The Gold Cloak struggled to maintain order as the city buzzed with rumors and speculation. That was Tyrion who suggested the solution. A grand ceremony, he proposed. Let the people see the transition of power. Let them witness honor and action. Leave it to Tyrion to turn a political crisis into a public relations opportunity. The ceremony was unlike anything Westeros had ever seen. Instead of a coronation in the Sept, they held it in the Dragon Pit, where common folk could attend alongside nobles. Daenerys arrived on Dragon, her black dragon's wings casting shadows over the gathered crowd. But instead of inspiring fear, the sight filled people with awe. She dismounted and walked to where Ned Stark waited, dressed not in royal finery but in simple northern clothing. The symbolism was clear. This was not about pageantry, but about duty. People of Westeros, Daenerys called out, her voice carrying across the ancient amphitheater. I came to you with fire and blood, promising to break the wheel of oppression. Today, I break the greatest wheel of all, the cycle of conquest and tyranny that has plagued our realm for centuries. She turned to Ned, and in front of thousands of witnesses, she removed her own crown and placed it at his feet. Lord Eddard Stark, I offer you the crown, not as a conqueror, but as a servant of the realm. Will you accept this burden? The entire realm is holding its breath right now. Ned's response would be remembered for generations. I accept, not as a king seeking glory, but as a father seeking to leave a better world for his children. I swear by the old gods and the new, that I will serve the realm, protect the innocent, and rule with justice tempered by mercy. The crowd erupted, but not in the way anyone expected. Instead of cheers or gears, there was a moment of profound silence, as if the entire realm was processing this unprecedented moment. Then, slowly, the applause began, not the roar of subjects before a conqueror, but the respectful acknowledgement of citizens before a public servant. This is literally the most wholesome moment in Game of Thrones history. The transition wasn't without challenges. The Iron Throne itself became a symbol of the old ways, and one of Ned's first acts was to have it destroyed. The molten metal was reforged into something new. A simple chair surrounded by a council table where representatives from each kingdom would sit as equals. Daenerys didn't disappear into exile. Instead, she became the realm's first official protector, using her dragons not for conquest, but for defense. When the White Walkers eventually came south, it was her fire that held the line while Ned's strategic mind coordinated the realm's defense. The war against the dead played out differently too, with the realm united under just leadership rather than fractured by civil war. The living had resources and coordination the Night King hadn't expected. Jon Snow led the northern forces, but he did so as Ned Stark's son, not as a secret Targaryen prince. The battle was still costly, but victory came with fewer losses. Imagine if the long night had been fought by a united realm instead of exhausted enemies. In the aftermath, the new Westeros began to take shape. Ned's council included Samwell Tarly as Grand Maester, bringing scholarly wisdom to governance. Davos Seaworth became Master of Ships, his common origins making him a voice for the small folk. Even Jaime Lannister found redemption, serving as a knight sworn to protect the innocent rather than kings. Tyrion remained as Hand, but his role was different. Instead of managing a single ruler's whims, he helped coordinate between the representatives of different kingdoms, using his wit to solve conflicts through dialogue rather than violence. The economic changes were revolutionary. Trade flourished without the constant threat of war. The faith of the Seven and the old gods coexisted peacefully under a ruler who respected both traditions. Even the Iron Bank of Braavos noted the stability, leading to favorable loan terms that funded infrastructure projects across the realm. They basically turned Westeros into a medieval democracy. Years passed, and the realm prospered in ways it never had before. Children grew up without the constant threat of war. The arts flourished as patronage went to poets and painters instead of sellswords and siege engines. The University of Old expanded, becoming a center of learning that rivaled the great libraries of Essos. Daenerys, now in her 30s, had found a different kind of fulfillment. Her dragons were guardians rather than weapons of war. She traveled the realm, mediating disputes and ensuring justice reached even the most remote villages. The Dragon Queen had become the Dragon Protector, beloved rather than feared. Ned's children each found their own paths in this new world. Sansa became the Lady of Winterfell, but also served as the North's representative on the Royal Council. Arya continued her adventures, but as an explorer and diplomat rather than an assassin. Bran's abilities made him invaluable in preventing conflicts before they could escalate. Every Stark kid got a happy ending. This is the timeline we deserved. But perhaps the most significant change was cultural. The songs sung in taverns were no longer about conquest and revenge, but about honor, sacrifice, and the courage to choose what's right over what's easy. Children playing in the streets pretended to be counselors, solving problems rather than knights winning battles. The Iron Throne was gone, but its absence had made the realm stronger. Power shared was power multiplied, and Westeros had become living proof that even the most entrenched systems could change when good people chose to act. As Ned Stark grew older, he began preparing for succession, but not in the traditional way. Instead of passing power to his eldest son, he worked with the council to establish a system where leadership would be chosen based on merit and the consent of the governed. It was radical, unprecedented, and absolutely terrifying to the old guard of nobles. They're literally inventing democracy centuries early. The foreign implications were enormous too. The free cities of Essos watched nervously as this new West proved that stable, just governance was possible. Slave revolts increased. Inspired by stories of the Dragon Queen who'd chosen service over rule, the Dothraki, deprived of their traditional raiding targets, gradually settled into a more peaceful existence. Even the Iron Bank had to adapt. Their traditional model of profiting from warfare and instability was challenged by a realm that paid its debts on time and invested in long-term prosperity rather than short-term military gains. Religious tensions, which had plagued the realm for centuries, began to ease. The High Sparrow movement never gained traction because the common people felt heard by their government. The faith militant wasn't needed because justice was accessible to all, not just those who could afford it. Literally every single problem in the original series is being solved. As winter turned to spring and spring to summer, the realm celebrated its 10th year under the new system. Trade routes stretched from Dorne to the Wall, carrying not just goods but ideas, innovations, and cultural exchange. The Summer Islands sent scholars, Karth offered exotic spices, and even the mysterious Ishai established diplomatic relations. The celebration wasn't just about prosperity, though. It was about hope, something that had been in short supply. For generations, parents could reasonably expect their children to live better lives than they had. Young people could pursue education, art, or trade without fearing conscription into endless wars. Daenerys, now approaching middle age, had taken to writing. Her memoirs, titled The Weight of Crowns, became the most widely read book in the known world. In it, she wrote about the moment she realized that true power came not from the ability to command others, but from the wisdom to know when not to use that ability. She literally wrote the book on good leadership. The dragons too had adapted to the peaceful times. Dragon, Rhaegal, and Viserion had become symbols of protection rather than destruction. They nested in the ruins of Vis Dothrak but made regular flights across Westeros, their presence a reminder that justice had powerful guardians. Children born in this new era grew up with a fundamentally different relationship to authority. They were taught that leaders were servants, not masters, and that questioning power was not treason but responsibility. The very concept of absolute monarchy seemed as foreign to them as democracy had seemed to their grandparents. The ripple effects reached even the most remote corners of the world. In Yati, emperors began establishing councils of advisors drawn from different social classes. In the Summer Islands, the traditional feast-or-famine cycle of politics gave way to more stable representative governance. This butterfly effect is reshaping the entire known world, but the true test of the new system came when Ned Stark, now in his 70s, announced his intention to step down. The realm held its breath. Would the peaceful transition of power survive its first real test? Would the nobles accept a commoner as king? Would the system collapse without its founder? The succession process took a full year of debate, discussion, and careful deliberation. Representatives from every corner of the realm participated, from the fishing villages of the Fingers to the mining communities of the Westerland. The final choice was unprecedented: a former slave from Essos, who had risen through merit to become one of the realm's most trusted administrators. When King Missandei was crowned, for she had taken no other name, the ceremony was held not in King's Landing, but in a different city each year, symbolizing that the capital belonged to all the people. The crown itself was simple, a circlet of iron and gold that any citizen could theoretically wear, for it represented service rather than dominion. A former slave becoming Queen of Westeros now. That's character development. Daenerys, now gray-haired but still riding her dragons, attended the coronation as an honored guest. She had achieved something no conqueror in history had managed. She had conquered power itself, bending it to serve justice rather than ambition. The Dragon Queen had become the Dragon Sage, and her legacy would outlast any throne. As she watched the ceremony, she thought back to that moment in the throne room when she had knelt before Ned Stark. It seemed like a lifetime ago. Yet the consequences of that single decision had reshaped the world. The Iron Throne was gone, but something far more valuable had taken its place. The idea that power belonged to those who would use it wisely and surrender it willingly. The new queen's first act was to establish the Eddard Stark Memorial Library, a collection of knowledge from across the known world, free for all to access. The second was to commission a statue of Daenerys Targaryen, not as a conqueror atop a dragon, but as a young woman placing a crown at the feet of an honorable man. This is the Game of Thrones ending we all deserved but never got. In the final analysis, the question "what if Daenerys offered the Iron Throne to Ned Stark?" revealed something profound about power, leadership, and human nature. It showed that the greatest strength isn't the ability to take power, but the wisdom to know when to give it away. It demonstrated that true honor lies not in winning at all costs, but in choosing what's right even when it's difficult. The realm that emerged from this single moment of unexpected humility became a beacon of hope for the entire world. It proved that even the most entrenched systems of oppression could be overcome, not through violence and conquest, but through the simple revolutionary act of choosing service over self-interest. And in the end, that may be the most important lesson of all, that the real Game of Thrones isn't about who sits in the chair of power, but about who has the courage to stand up from it when the realm would be better served by someone else. The Song of Ice and Fire became a song of justice and mercy, and the realm lived not fearfully ever after, but hopefully ever after, knowing that good people would always find a way to choose what's right over what's easy. What did you think of this alternate timeline? Could you imagine the Dragon Queen actually making this choice? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more mind-blowing Game of Thrones what-if scenarios. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our latest deep dives into the world of Westeros.